After a wild night with Jack, I ran away that same night and went abroad to study. Afterward, the cold-hearted man didn't bat an eye and said I could go, but I must return in 3 years. A few years later, as I walked out of the airport with my child, Jack's bodyguards invited us into a car. I stammered and tried to argue. I got married. Above my head, I heard that familiar laugh, void of any warmth. Sarah, you let my child take another man's name. You've got some nerve. Everyone knows Jack's discipline was unbearably strict. I wasn't allowed to spend the night outside ever since I could remember, and I couldn't date anyone. But tonight, Jack was drunk, lying right in front of me. The warm yellow light fell on his cold, handsome face, making my heart race. Jack, I called out to him. Jack didn't respond. He was drunk, maybe even drugged. Anyway, he was like this when I came in. I grabbed a wet towel to wipe his forehead, but suddenly, he pulled me into his arms. Raise your head and look at me. His deep, hoarse voice cut through the night, commanding yet graceful. My heart pounded against my chest as I looked into his drunken eyes. Boldly, I reached for his collar. Normally, I wouldn't dare. Jack's strict upbringing didn't even allow me to date. So how could I do something like this? When he woke up, he'd probably kill me himself. Suddenly, a cold kiss landed on my lips, making me shiver all over. Relax. In an unquestionable tone, Jack instantly shattered my reason. That night, I was so scared I knocked over the tea on the table and wrinkled the hotel's bedsheet. But I held my breath, fearing Jack would wake from his drunken state and discover his niece had the audacity to climb into his bed. After tossing and turning until dawn, Jack finally let me go. With trembling legs, I quickly dressed and fled. Sarah, did you know someone pissed off your uncle recently? I was hiding at the old house, applying medicine to myself, when I got a call from my best friend. Accidentally touching a bruised spot, I winced in pain. He's ruthless, doesn't feel any pity. What happened to my uncle? My friend whispered, your uncle's men have turned the city upside down, like they're looking for someone. I wonder who's unlucky enough to piss him off. I slowly stopped what I was doing. I knew who Jack was looking for. Some audacious woman who took advantage of him being drunk. Suddenly, I heard the door open. Then, familiar footsteps walked from the entryway. I hurriedly threw on my clothes and bumped into the man standing at the entrance. Jack, I was startled and hurriedly hung up the phone. Jack stood in the light, bathed in a halo, his cold and handsome face silently staring at me. Cold. I lowered my head, ears burning. Millimeter. Jack's gaze dropped to the inside of my wrist. A kiss mark he left last night. I hadn't had time to cover it up. Seeing someone, his tone was indifferent, making my hair stand on end. No, can't I? Jack looked down at me and chuckled softly. Sarah, what do you think? You're only 18. Just graduated from high school. Yeah, in Jack's eyes, I was still too young. Jack said, before college, don't let anyone touch you. If I find out there's a next time, you know the consequences. But Jack squinted his eyes. What about you? I already slept with you. I didn't dare say it and ran back to my room. I thought Jack would go easy on me if he knew the truth. But a few days later, I went to his office and overheard him speaking. If you can't find her, keep looking. What if you do find her? Someone asked. Jack let out a cold chuckle. Do I need to teach you? Lock her up. I was terrified, forgetting what I wanted to say to him, and booked a flight abroad that night. I only left Jack one sentence. Uncle, I'm going abroad to study. A dozen hours later, I got a short message on my phone. Fine, but you must return in 3 years. 5 years passed in no time. I woke from that steamy dream to find the plane had landed in City A. 5 years later, I still got flustered and hot whenever I dreamed of that night. I closed my eyes, feeling a little lost. An ad for Jack's company was playing on the screen. Jack's cold and handsome face was just like back then, making my heart race. Mommy, we've arrived. Daisy's voice brought me back to reality. Looking into her eyes, which were just like those on the billboard, I felt a wave of worry. I was 2 years late from Jack's mandated return date. If I hadn't heard Jack was about to marry, I would have stayed abroad. Cars came and went at the arrivals platform. I led Daisy to the VIP lounge, and was busy arranging a cab when the door opened. A man walked in, surrounded by people. Without knowing why, Daisy ran straight toward the leading man. In front of everyone, she spread her arms toward the cool, elegant Jack, giggling, "Uncle, hug me." The room fell into a dead silence. I turned and saw his face, terrified out of my mind, and rushed over to pick up Daisy. Uncle. 5 years without seeing him, Jack was the same as ever. His deep, dark eyes were full of scrutiny, as if he could see right through me. Jack didn't show much surprise, but raised an eyebrow. You still remember you have an uncle? Then he looked at Daisy in my arms, his gaze fixed on her. Care to explain? She's my child. Silence fell again. Jack's gaze instantly turned cold. Seeing my anxious expression, he turned to his secretary and said, "Move the meeting online. Take Miss Sarah home." Just like that, Jack's people put me in the car. I knew he'd be mad. 5 years without a word, and now I come back with a kid. The fact that Jack didn't break my legs is already pretty good. The whole ride, I kept my head down, not daring to speak. Daisy, on the other hand, wasn't scared of strangers. She snuggled in Jack's arms and slept. Jack held Daisy with one hand, while the other tapped rhythmically on the armrest, like a doomsday clock counting down. After a long time, Jack let out a cold laugh. "Sarah, it's been 5 years, and you've really gone big. Where's the kids, Dad?" His tone was casual, but the chill in his words was chilling. I lied off the top of my head. He died abroad from an illness. I even raised my hand to show the cheap ring on my finger to back up my story. Jack looked at me calmly, saying nothing for a long time. The car drove into the old mansion in the dense night. Daisy was carried off to sleep by the nanny. A small lamp was on in the living room. Jack sat on the sofa, scanning me as I stood there obediently. He chuckled. "Tell me, what did you do wrong?" After being away for 5 years, in that moment, it felt like I was back to when Jack would control me. Feeling a bit insecure, I whispered, "I shouldn't have left for 5 years. I shouldn't have married and had a kid behind your back." "What else?" For some reason, Jack's gaze sharpened, like a blade. I kept my head down. "That's all. That's all." Jack savored my words, his smile gradually turning cold. He stood up, grabbing his coat as if to leave. "Uncle, where are you going?" Jack replied indifferently, "I'm about to get married, didn't you know?" I suddenly realized he was going to see the woman he was about to marry and nodded, feeling lost. "Aren't you going to ask who it is?" Looking dumbfounded, I asked, "Who?" "Zoe." The moment I heard that name, my expression changed. "Uncle, you can't." Others were fine, but Zoe was the only exception. Jack sneered. "What? You've had a kid, and I can't have a date?" "No." Accompanied by the sound of the door closing, Jack left. Late at night, in a bar's private room, my girlfriends stared wide-eyed. "What? You had Jack's kid?" Lately, rumors about Jack's engagement to Zoe were everywhere. After a few days of holding it in, I couldn't take it anymore. I sought advice from my girlfriends. Everyone chimed in, revealing the truth to me. Years ago, Jack had turned the world upside down looking for someone, because he had been taken advantage of by a woman. Initially, Jack planned to have the woman locked up, but then changed his mind. Later, Zoe stood up and claimed responsibility, becoming my uncle's girlfriend. The more I listened, the worse I felt. Isn't this just impersonation? Especially when, years ago, I caught Zoe plotting her way into my uncle's life red-handed. Frustrated, I got up to take a breather in the washroom. Coincidentally, familiar voices came from the stall next to me. "Don't worry. 3 years ago, he didn't even know who he slept with. If the real one had any intention, she would have stepped forward by now. If she still hasn't appeared, it means she has no proof. So what if I impersonated her? Once I marry in, all of Jack's fortune will be mine." It was Zoe. What a coincidence. The events of that night 3 years ago happened too suddenly. When I barged into the room, Jack was already out of his mind. Of course, he couldn't tell who I was. He just held me tightly, pulling me into an endless sea of desire. Zoe took advantage of that loophole. Snapping back to reality, I realized that if Zoe was here tonight, Jack probably was too. Not wanting Jack to be taken advantage of, I searched along the row of private rooms until I found Jack's. I pushed open the door to find Jack absent-mindedly browsing the drink menu. Hearing the commotion, he raised his eyes to look at me. His gaze fixed on me as I gathered my courage and walked over. "Jack, yeah, can you change someone?" "Change someone? I don't like her," I stammered. "The aunt." Jack's sharp, deep eyes fixated on me like a judge interrogating a criminal. "Then who do you like?" I almost got lost in those dark, deep eyes. On an impulse, I grabbed Jack's tie. "Jack, can't you consider me?" As soon as I said it, I realized how ridiculous it sounded. A long minute of silence gradually brought me back to my senses. "Oh my, what am I doing?" Jack looked down at me, after a while curving his lips into a lukewarm smile. "What, looking for a stepdad for your kid and targeting your uncle?" I had expected Jack to rebuke me coldly, or maybe straight up have his bodyguards take me away. What I didn't expect was for him to respond in this tone. My face flushed. Jack leaned closer, staring at his tie that I had tightly gripped. He softly said, "Sarah, let go, and I'll pretend you didn't say anything tonight." Hearing the approaching high heels outside the room, I got stubborn and met his eyes. Why not? I'm not a kid anymore. I want to date. Date your uncle. I pressed my lips firmly, refusing to say more. Jack's smile gradually faded. He grasped my chin and leaned closer. I felt his breath so close. I shut my eyes in fear. For a moment, our breath intermingled, making me anxious. Was he going to kiss me? The kiss I was waiting for never landed. Jack let out a low chuckle. Want me to kiss you? Sarah, you've got such guts. Shame instantly flooded over me, making me tremble. Jack's hand rested on my neck, its warmth seeping inch by inch. Open your eyes, he commanded softly. My eyelids fluttered, but I dared not look at him. Where's that courage from a moment ago? I stubbornly said. I just wasn't ready. This earned me another chuckle from Jack. And you dare suggest I change girlfriends? When you get the nerve, we'll talk about changing girlfriends. After I escaped from Jack's private room that day, I didn't see him for quite a while. His secretary said Jack was busy with business and had no time to return. I guessed maybe he found out about my feelings and was purposely avoiding me. I felt a bit dejected. To take my mind off things, I took my best friend's advice and chatted with a few handsome guys online. One evening, after putting on makeup, I was getting ready for a date. A car stopped at my door. Daisy hopped out of the car and ran towards me joyfully. Mommy, Daisy is going on a trip. A trip? I was taken aback. I stared at the man getting out of the car, my mind a bit slow on the uptake. Jack turned to the nanny behind him and instructed, pack their things. Where are we going? Jack glanced at my lightly made-up face and said, to the resort. In the blink of an eye, the suitcase was already loaded into the trunk by the driver. As I sat in the car, it finally dawned on me that the estate we were heading to was 100 kilometers away. Jack, I have a date. Though that date was with a group of people, it wouldn't miss me. Jack looked out the window and clicked his tongue softly. Why didn't you say earlier? We're already on the highway. Do you expect me to drop you off? The driver smiled and said, Jack is going for a business meeting. The little miss heard and insisted on coming, so he brought you along. Oh, so it wasn't specifically to take me. I turned to stare out the window, feeling even more down. After a bumpy ride, we finally arrived at the resort in the evening. As soon as I got out of the car, I saw a young, beautiful figure rushing towards Jack. Like a butterfly. You're so late. In a slightly coquettish tone, Jack introduced her. Sarah, you should know. Zoe just noticed me. Sarah, long time no see. Zoe and I were about the same age. Back in the day, we were classmates. So this long time no see would sound pretty legitimate to an outsider. Daisy hugged Jack's leg. Uncle, I want cake. Jack's expression softened, and he bent down to pick her up. Which one? Daisy led Jack towards the crowd. After the tall and short figures left, Zoe's smile faded. Your kid calls him uncle. Sarah, don't you feel ashamed of your little crush? I wasn't sure why, but strict Jack was unusually lenient with Daisy. He hadn't corrected her address. I stared at Zoe and smiled. Zoe seems quite afraid of my return. Zoe gave a sarcastic smile. Of course, I'd be worried. If my boyfriend was eyed by my niece, I'd be embarrassed too. Back in the day, my relationship with Zoe wasn't exactly pleasant. Once, in the girls' restroom, Zoe was discussing how to seduce my uncle, and I overheard. Young and hot-headed, I confronted her. She threatened me not to tell anyone, or else. Later, she snooped through my diary, found out I liked Jack, and threatened to tell my uncle. Years have gone by, and it seems Zoe hasn't changed a bit. Sarah, need me to confess for you? You already have a kid. Where's your courage? Jack dotes on you because he sees you as a junior. Try making him your rebound and see what happens. Really? I took out my phone and called Jack right in front of Zoe. When Jack answered, I confessed directly, Uncle, I like you. Jack paused for a moment and then hung up without a word. I held up the phone and looked at Zoe. He didn't kick me out. Should I tell him all about your schemes? Zoe's smile froze. Sarah, have you no shame? I was done with her nonsense and turned to walk away. Suddenly, I heard a splash behind me. Water splattered all over me. Then I heard Zoe's cries for help. Help, Sarah, don't leave, please help me. I turned around, surprised to see Zoe struggling in the pool. Everyone's eyes turned in our direction. Hey, isn't that Jack's girlfriend? How did she fall into the pool? The lifeguard immediately jumped in to pull Zoe out. As people murmured among themselves, Jack parted the crowd and walked over. What happened? Zoe, shivering and coughing, replied with a quiver in her voice, Jack. Sarah doesn't seem to like me. Jack glanced at me, locking eyes with my furious gaze. Zoe carefully gripped his hand, avoiding getting him wet, and solemnly accused, she pushed me in. There were sighs from the crowd. Oh no, the girl's done for it. Everyone knows Jack cherishes Zoe. Jack asked calmly, Sarah, is it true? I hurried to explain, She jumped in herself, shivering. Zoe added, Jack, I know my intentions in approaching you weren't pure. It's normal for Sarah to have issues with me, but she forgave me for everything. So why can't she forgive me too? I was shocked. Jack knew about all of this. Jack didn't deny it and simply said, all right, I'll have someone take you to the hospital. Zoe glanced at me smugly and continued, could you stay with me? Without blinking, Jack said, Sarah is not happy with you. I should stay here and teach her some manners. Zoe turned pale at his words. Jack released her hand, wiped his wet fingers, and threw the handkerchief into the trash. Sarah, come with me. Jack led me into the house. Come here. He casually sat on the couch, the same posture as when he questioned me for flunking math back in the day. I didn't move. Jack frowned slightly. Why are you standing there? At that moment, my resentment reached its peak. I suddenly shouted, Uncle, you are really annoying. My voice echoed in the room. Jack seemed unsure if he heard correctly. What did you call me? Tears started rolling down my cheeks. Are you getting old and senile or something? The water was on my back. She jumped in after I turned around. Jack said, I'm not blind. No one thinks you pushed Zoe in tonight. Now come here and change your clothes. It was only then that I noticed a dry dress neatly placed on the couch. However, rage still burned inside me. So I yelled, so you're saying I'm stupid? A vein throbbed on Jack's forehead as he patiently said, I didn't say you were stupid. Then why don't you break up with her? The sudden change in topic left Jack speechless. After a moment, he calmed down and said, okay, let's break up. Sit down, and I'll talk to you slowly. I interrupted him sharply, no. You've known what Zoe is like all along, yet you wouldn't break up with her. That means you really like her. When I told you she wasn't sincere, I felt like a clown. I was speaking so fast that Jack barely got the chance to butt in. I didn't think that way. Didn't I already agree to break up? My voice got louder. You're just brushing me off. I'm done with you. I won't bother with your stuff anymore. Jack's expression was complicated. There was a mix of anger and forced calm. Sarah, say that again. I changed into my sneakers noisily, reopened the door, and yelled back, are you getting old? Can't you hear? And with that, I slammed the door hard under his gloomy gaze. It was my first big fight with Jack. I cooled down after leaving the room. The hotel was fully booked. Where could I find a room now? Just then, Jack's secretary hurried over and handed me a keycard. Mr. Jack said Daisy is being looked after, so you can rest well tonight. I felt a wave of mixed emotions. Did he say anything else? The secretary smiled. No, nothing else. It felt like punching cotton, awkward and soft. We had just fought. Wasn't he angry? I took the keycard and slept through the night in the room. The next morning, the secretary knocked on the door. Mr. Jack said he broke up. Once you're not mad anymore, come down for breakfast. I was a bit shocked. He really broke up? Yes, he did. Going downstairs for breakfast, the atmosphere was a bit awkward. I had yelled some pretty nasty things at Jack last night, and didn't want to apologize in front of everyone. So I kept my head down and stayed quiet. Jack didn't seem to care. He chatted and laughed with others. Mr. Jack, your lady friend seems a bit unhappy. Jack shrugged. She had a bit of a tantrum last night, and I didn't manage to cheer her up. He handed me a cupcake casually. I took it and nibbled slowly, still not speaking. All morning, Jack handed me things until I was so full I could barely move. I decided to grab his phone and play with it. Just then, Jack's phone buzzed. Someone was calling. I didn't want to get too close to him, so I put it on speaker. A young voice, full of teasing, came through the speakers. Hey, is that Daisy kid yours? As soon as the words hit, I froze and sat up straight. Jack didn't even lift an eyelid. What? The caller laughed. She looks a lot like you. When did you have a daughter behind my back? She asked me for ice cream. Jack paused in the middle of hanging up, lifted his gaze, and stared thoughtfully at me. Everything around grew eerily calm. My heart raced. Jack studied my face deeply and chuckled. Got anything to tell me, Sarah? I nonchalantly stuffed the phone into Jack's pocket, pretended I didn't hear anything. Jack didn't rush. He just stared at me, waiting for an answer. I mumbled, I'm going to the hot springs with my girlfriends tonight. Jack stayed silent. I added, I might sleep over and not come back. Oh, you're sleeping over? Jack repeated slowly. I stiffened and said with a straight face, don't look for me. Jack laughed. All right, I won't look for you. With that, I left without looking back. After walking a long way, I could still feel Jack's gaze on me. Once I turned the corner, I suddenly sprinted in the opposite direction. Oh my God, am I close to getting busted? At night, my sudden entrance startled my friend. Sarah, why do you look so pale? And you smell like alcohol. Did you drink? Holding a bottle of vodka from who knows where, I wobbled over and plopped into a soft chair in front of her. Isn't drinking supposed to give you courage? I mumbled. Why am I still scared? My friend picked up the bottle and screamed. 56 proof. You drank half a bottle. Are you nuts? My heart kept pounding wildly. The lights swirled. I felt dizzy. What do I do? I wailed loudly. She steadied my head, took the bottle, and asked, what do you mean? What do you do? What did you do now? I leaned in and shouted in her ear, Jack knows. Her eyes widened in disbelief. He knows the kid is his. I laughed nervously, almost. I'm about to be done for. Remember to visit my grave next year. She sighed in relief. Hey, he hasn't figured it out yet, has he? She placed me gently in the chair, and went to grab something from the table. When he almost knows, just run again. Or if you like sleeping with him, do it once more then run. My friend's voice got stuck in her throat. In my daze, I looked up. What's wrong? Keep talking. I like listening to you. Sleep again. She suddenly covered my mouth. In the dark, we stared at each other. She lowered her voice, as if telling a ghost story. Do you know where we are? The broadcast room. I forgot to turn off the mic earlier. Minutes later, my friend dragged me out of the broadcast room. We stumbled down the hallway like a kite in the wind. I laughed hysterically. Damn it. Why does this resort have a broadcast room? You idiot. Why drag me to the broadcast room in the middle of the night? Just shut up. I had no idea where she was taking me, only that we finally stopped. Lights swirled in my vision, dazzling and blurred. There were noisy people around. When I finally saw the man walking towards me, I almost jumped out of my skin. Jack's smile had vanished, and his dark, piercing eyes were unsettling. Suddenly, a man dragged my best friend aside, grinning wickedly. Sweetheart, where's my birthday song? My friend looked resigned as she was carried away, leaving me alone, frozen in place, like I'd been spellbound. Jack. In a matter of minutes, the whole place cleared out. The grand banquet hall was empty, except for me and him. Surrounded by Jack's men, there was no way out. Sarah, why are you running? Jack's voice was low and steady, unhurried. Terrified, I paled but bluffed. Not running. Just taking a trip. Almost missed my flight. What for? He pressed. To mourn my late husband. Crap, what was I even saying? Oh, Jack chuckled. To mourn your late husband. I turned even paler, my lips trembling, unable to say a word. Yeah, because we, got married. Jack gently grabbed my neck, smiling calmly. So, you've married someone else, while carrying my baby. He knew everything. I went limp, almost clinging to him. No. Jack spoke slowly, naming my child after someone else. You've got guts. Think I might kill you for that, My brain was struggling to think straight, and I clung to his arm, whimpering softly, please, let me go. I was drunk, babbling. Daisy's dad is dead. If you don't believe me, I can video call you while I mourn. Jack abruptly pulled me closer, a cold smile on his lips. Keep going, Sarah. My late husband is right here tonight, ready to listen to your lies. I was already drunk out of my mind. Now, I was so scared I couldn't move a step, collapsing into Jack's arms. Jack, I'm dizzy. Jack laughed, amused. No worries. I've got plenty of time to wear you out. He wanted an explanation, no doubt about it. I held on to him, gathering myself before suddenly dashing outside. Jack's soft laugh echoed behind me. He didn't seem worried at all. Like a headless chicken, I ran, searching for a way out. Jack was right behind me. I was stopped at the door. Miss Sarah, you can't go this way. I turned and ran upstairs. I passed several guarded doors until I reached one level. The door ahead was wide open, the only one. It was the presidential suite. I debated for a moment, then blocked Jack at the elevator, bluffing, you can't follow me. Jack nodded, amused, I won't. When I turned and bolted towards the door, I nearly tripped on the thick carpet. Jack was quick, catching me in time. The faint woody scent, intensified by body heat, filled my nose. Are your eyes on the top of your head? I struggled briefly, realizing I couldn't get free, my ears burning. Jack, let me go. I can walk fine. Oh, you can walk fine. He chuckled softly. I thought you were drunk. With that, he released me, watching me run inside frantically. Taking long strides, he followed unhurriedly. Slow down. I'm not going to eat you. I barely made it inside when suddenly my legs gave out, and I was lifted. The scene spun as I was thrown onto the bed. Drunks sure move slow. I was getting impatient. Jack leisurely removed his watch. Jack, my voice trembled. Spare me, please don't kill me. Jack's voice was laced with amusement. You wanted to break up and cut ties with me. I agreed. Now you want to leave. How can I spare you? In my confusion, Jack's hand cushioned my back, pressing me into his chest. I felt overwhelmed by his warmth and scent, trapped in a daze. I couldn't escape or get away. Sarah, ever heard of a late husband seeking revenge? His cool tone made me shiver all over. I tried to back away, but Jack calmly pulled me back. Spare me, don't take my life. As my body heated up and the alcohol took over, I started spouting nonsense, even quoting TV dramas. Jack, in a good mood, hushed me. Sure, beg me, please. His fingers slid down my neck, making me weak. Jack's cold laughter echoed. Begging won't help. Didn't you want to sleep with Jack? If you can't handle it, don't close your eyes tonight. Sober Jack was clearly harder to deal with than 5 years ago. Unlike back then, tonight, Jack seemed to mean punishment, kissing forcefully and harshly. Soon, a metallic taste mingled in our mouths. Tell me, who is Daisy's dad? It's not you. Jack slapped me playfully. Relax. Don't you know you tense up when you lie? Jack, calling won't help. Tell the truth. Exhausted, I finally confessed the truth, trembling. Only then did Jack relent, gently kissing my forehead. All right, sleep. The memories of 5 years ago and tonight's dreams intertwined, tossing me in a feverish heat. I woke from the dream, faintly hearing the sound of water. Jack was on the phone. The speaker was on, clear through the splashing sounds. I thought you were going to break her legs. I froze, realizing her meant me. Jack's cold voice cut through. Normally, I would. Why not this time? Jack was silent for a while, then said, she seemed pretty pitiful. No need for that. I slowly turned over, meeting Jack's eyes as he emerged from the bathroom. I instinctively burrowed under the covers. He walked over, sat on the bed, and stroked my head. When will you stop being so timid? Weren't you quite sharp-tongued last time? I peeked out, not saying a word. Jack stared at me for a moment, then sighed quietly. Still too young. I should have brought you back from abroad immediately. Am I really that scary? You didn't even tell me about something like this. Actually, I hid it quite well initially. I reported my whereabouts regularly, even had scheduled reports while in the delivery room. To avoid Jack's suspicion, I even set the frequency to a daily update. Every detail. The goal was to make him fed up with my messages. Thinking of this, I suddenly grabbed Jack's phone from the bedside and opened Instagram. To my surprise, I found myself pinned at the top. Jack ignored my surprised look, patted my butt, and said, "Get up. We're going home today." I was exhausted. Halfway there, I realized I was supposed to be mad at Jack. He still hadn't explained Zoe to me, and he hadn't confessed his love. Isn't he a jerk? The car stopped in front of the old house. I glanced at him quietly, met his gaze, and said, "Don't talk, I'm mad." Jack was stunned. Why? I said, "Take a guess." So he just left. My friend listened seriously, resting her cheek on her hand. I said, "Yeah, he just left." My friend exploded. That's too much. Actually, I forgot to mention, Jack asked me what I wanted for dinner before he left, and I just ignored him. She saw my gloomy face and said, "Sarah, have you ever thought that the reason you're so submissive is because your relationship isn't equal? You need to show him you're no longer a kid he can control. You're an adult." I thought she made sense and asked, "How?" "Do everything Jack didn't allow you to do before." I thought that made sense. That same night, Jack, who was still working, received a text message from me. A few photos of male models, each handsome in their own way. "Jack, these two look good tonight. Help me pick one." Jack called immediately. I hung up without regret. Then I took Daisy to stay at my best friend's house for a few days, fearlessly provoking Jack. Our chat logs showed I claimed to fall in love with 18 young men in 10 days. My friend looked at the chosen photos from the internet and nodded with satisfaction. Not bad. This will give him a sense of crisis. You're not dependent on him. Jack went from initially warning me to simply replying with one, as if keeping count. Just when I thought I could get away with this for a few more days, Daisy suddenly came crying to me. She said her toy bear was missing. After a long time of thinking, Daisy sobbed and said, "I left Bear in Daddy's bedroom." "The old house? Your dad's bedroom?" Daisy nodded vigorously. "Mommy, can you bring Bear back?" Daisy cried so pitifully, I felt torn. What if I ran into Jack? I called the housekeeper. She said, "Jack isn't home tonight." I breathed a sigh of relief and rushed over to the old house. As dusk fell, the light inside the old house dimmed. I arrived at Jack's bedroom door, ready to push it open, when I suddenly heard the sound of running water inside. He was home. Nervously, I suddenly noticed Bear's ears sticking out from the gap in the door. It was within my reach. I mustered the courage, quietly widened the gap, and slipped my hand through. The house was silent. I didn't realize the water had long stopped running. A soft bathrobe slipped into my hand. It felt slightly wet. I was startled, suddenly grabbed by a hand, and pulled into the room. With a click, the door closed, the last light vanished into the dim room. Jack's unique scent, mingled with the scent of body wash, spread faintly. Sarah, I don't remember teaching you to sneak into a man's bedroom so freely. Hot breath brushed my ear, bringing a humid warmth. Jack's distinctive voice struck my sensitive nerves. My legs weakened, and I grabbed his bathrobe for support. Retorting stubbornly, I said, I'm an adult, don't need your teaching. Jack paused, seemingly understanding my intent, and laughed softly. My bad. I shouldn't have left the door open to tempt you. My face rested against his exposed neckline. I felt the water droplets travel down his firm, solid muscles, dripping into the bathrobe. Jack's voice was hoarse, half smiling as he suggested, you can pull it open to look. It's just a suggestion, not a lesson. Beneath Jack's heated chest was a strong and steady heartbeat, thumping against my palm. A delayed rebellious streak made me take his words lightly. I suddenly wrapped my arms around his neck, raised my head, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him. Because it was so dark, I missed and kissed his Adam's apple. Jack's breath deepened, and he effortlessly pinned my hands and pressed me onto the bed, not giving me the silent treatment anymore. I pushed him slightly and mumbled, pause the fight. I need to get Daisy's bear. Jack didn't hold back. Fine, but first, let's talk about these 18 men you fell for. I choked, questioning, Jack, do you think you have me figured out? I'm not some pushover, even though I have your kid. So what? Don't think you can control me. Jack laughed. Control you? Sarah, honestly, when haven't you controlled me? When did I ever control you? Jack let go of me. Since we were kids. When your grades were bad, didn't I painstakingly urge you to study? If you got mad, you'd bring back even worse grades next time. I mumbled, that's because you were too harsh. I was afraid. Jack said, your parents entrusted you to me. I had to assert authority. I thought about it. Fine. Even if you disciplined me to be a guardian when we were kids, what about now? Am I stricter than you? He asked. You know the child is yours, and you watched me make a fool of myself. Jack stayed silent. He then said, I was only guessing. Why didn't you ask? Jack looked a bit gloomy. Do you think, given our relationship, asking like this without certainty makes me look like a creep? I thought about the situation. It is kinda creepy. Jack sighed. Whether it's sneaking a hair from Daisy for a paternity test or investigating in other ways, it all feels like I'm coveting you from a senior stance. I asked defiantly, so, you're saying if I make the first move, you wouldn't look like a creep? In principle, yes. I kicked him angrily. Is that why you won't confess to me? Jack's expression softened. I won't confess. He lowered his head and kissed me so deeply that I couldn't breathe. Then, looking at my flustered face, he said, I'll just propose. I was stunned. Jack continued, time's tight. I was in a rush to prepare, but I didn't think I'd keep you waiting. I fell into deep thought. True, you can't really give a heads up about a proposal. Otherwise, there'd be no surprise. I thought again. Wait, what about Zoe? You're moving on pretty fast. I haven't even touched her. How could you call it moving on? Jack pinched my face. Zoe planned to trap me back then, with help from someone behind the scenes. What I baited was actually that person. They drugged me and inadvertently hurt you. How could I not hold them accountable? I stared at his face, slowly mulling over. So you shouldn't have broken up with Zoe. There might still be more moves from the person behind. With Zoe around, it was easier. But now, he pinned me down on the pillow and kissed me deeply again. It doesn't matter anymore. It's not worth upsetting you over. As the night deepened, I realized that Jack was still jealous. Those 18 young men really got to him. I started to feel a bit panicked. I warned him, we are equals, you can't punish me. Jack whispered in my ear, Sarah, if I were your guardian, I might forbid you from going out. But tonight, you're right, we're equal. As a man, I'd only. Before he finished his last 3 words, I widened my eyes in fear. Before I could react, he dragged me over and went all out. Finally, laughing, Jack asked, how about we get the marriage certificate tomorrow? Good? Still dazed, I muttered, so soon? Too soon. Feels just right. Didn't you say you'd wait for me to make the first move? Jack laughed. Well, you can. Then he suddenly intensified his advance, lazily saying, quick, Sarah, propose to me. Seeing I was about to cry again, he stopped, comforting, all right. Just give me a title, okay? My best friend stared at the diamond ring on my hand, wide-eyed. So soon? I nodded. Yeah, so soon. The news of Jack wearing a wedding ring spread the next day. Considering my and Daisy's life, I wasn't planning to go public anytime soon. So, there was a lot of speculation about Jack's mysterious bride. Sarah, we meet again. This man named Sean blocked me again in the mall. This was the third time in a month. Persistent as a ghost. Jack must be very busy. How could he neglect your feelings, just for a wedding? I held a bag of chips, unsure if I should put it in the cart. My feelings? Sean politely said. You have feelings for your uncle, don't you? He got married. You must be heartbroken. I had to admit his smile was charming. But is he a bit crazy? He thought Jack married someone else. While I hesitated, Sean took out a phone and handed it to me. Sarah, I can help you. Just follow my instructions. Help me with what? To get your uncle. For the first time, I seriously looked at him. I took the phone, smiling. Sure, you're a good person. In just half an hour, we formed an alliance. Jack parked the car at the mall entrance right on time. I rushed out with my bags, opened the door, and met his eyes. Grinning, I called, Uncle. Jack's smile froze. Since getting married, Jack forbade me from calling him uncle in public, or there'd be punishment at home. Jack's gaze paused on the phone I held, realizing immediately. Get in. I leaned brazenly on him, pouting. Uncle, I missed you. You're busy with Auntie's wedding and ignoring me. Jack's eyelid twitched. Am I not here for you now? I blinked at him silently. In my ear, Sean's voice came through. Sarah, remember to set up the camera at home. With video evidence, we can't lose. Jack seemed like his old self again. On the way home, he strictly kept his uncle's role, refusing even to touch me. As soon as we got home, he went to the study. Sean urged me, quick, change your clothes. Trust me, as long as you record a video of him holding you, I'll help you. I sighed and went into the master bedroom. Sean sounded pleased. Brave girl, good job. After changing, I set up the phone. The door opened behind me. Sarah, Jack's voice stopped when he saw my clothes. I pulled at my school uniform and smiled sweetly. It looks like my high school uniform, Uncle. Do you remember? Jack sighed, quietly closing the door and started removing his watch. I was still reveling in my high school look when suddenly, I was lifted off the ground. Hey, Uncle Jack, smack. A slap landed on my butt. Jack's tone was icy. What did I say you'd call me? I struggled uselessly. There's someone. What are you doing? Jack unblinkingly pulled out the hidden phone, put it to his ear, and smiled. Sean, I thought last time was a sufficient warning. As he spoke, he absent-mindedly pushed me into the bed. My face was bright red. I tried to run, but Jack pulled me back under him. On the other end, Sean's sharp-tongued taunt came through. Jack, you're such a hypocrite. Marrying is one thing, but you're actually daring to covet your own niece. Tomorrow, I'll make sure your reputation is ruined. Jack chuckled lightly. You can try. With that, he hung up the phone. I hid my head under a pillow, Uncle. Along with the sound of tearing, my clothes turned to shreds. I was stunned. Jack commented nonchalantly. I didn't know you liked to play like this. If you want me to be a beast, keep calling me that. Softly, I said, he's always bothering me. It's really annoying. So I just wanted to mess with him. Then I complained. You knew he was recording, but you still picked me up. Jack leaned in to kiss me. Don't worry, it won't get out. He lifted his head. Now, call me that again. Uncle, is your butt itching again? I wrapped my arms around his neck affectionately. Hubby. After that day, everything returned to normal. On an afternoon several weeks later, I was out for afternoon tea with my best friend when we saw a piece of news. A local business owner was arrested for tax evasion and other charges. My friend pointed her fork at the person on TV. An enemy of your uncle. Seems to be somehow related to Zoe. I recognized the face. Sean. On the screen, Sean seemed to be saying something to the camera. The belief in his eyes almost overflowed from the screen. The TV station didn't play the original audio, just the news anchor's report. I asked, what's he saying? He looks kind of dumb. My friend squinted at the screen, reading his lips. He's talking to you. Huh, he said. Sarah, I won't let you down. When I get out, I'll try again. So, Jack still hasn't told Sean about our marriage. With Sean's imprisonment, some things from back then started to surface. 5 years ago, that night, Sean took advantage of a gap in the banquet to slip something in Jack's drink. Afterward, he had someone send Jack back to his hotel room, then sent Zoe to follow up, hoping to turn the raw rice into cooked rice. In the process, Zoe went to the wrong room. After the deed, she found out the other was a male college student. As for me, because Jack's secretary was busy, I brought a change of clothes from home to find Jack. Due to this mix-up, that incident happened, and Sean, always aiming to ruin his rival with a scandal. When he found Zoe was useless, he set his sights on me. This farce gradually came to an end with Sean's imprisonment. Jack specifically cleared Daisy's summer vacation to take us abroad. At the bustling airport, I suddenly heard a familiar voice. It was Zoe. She seemed to be arguing with a young man. Wait, could it be? Jack said, the male college student she slept with. I was shocked. They're still together after all these years. Yeah. Jack handled Daisy's lollipop, saying, he came to find me shortly after Zoe did. As soon as Zoe put on her act, he tore it down. I always knew it wasn't Zoe that night. Then why did you still announce to the public? Jack stared at Daisy's lollipop for a while and then smiled. I don't know. Maybe I was waiting for someone to come back. Or waiting for someone to come forward and claim me. Suddenly, an image of a big black dog holding a puppy tag, waiting for its owner, flashed in my mind. Did you ever think, what if it wasn't me? I thought about it. Jack wiped Daisy's sticky hands, almost every night. Sarah, my feelings for you are far from innocent. If it wasn't you, I'd stay away, even if we never met again in this lifetime. A shiver ran through me. When did it start? Not sure. Jack patted Daisy's head. Maybe when you came of age, maybe. Jack didn't finish. Only then did I realize, everything we have today is 1 in a million. If it weren't for that mix-up, no matter how proactive or enthusiastic I was, Jack would have remained unmoved. I quietly hooked my finger around his. Daisy's and my relationship couldn't stay hidden forever. The day we were exposed, our vacation wasn't over. I held my phone all day, feeling anxious. After all, my relationship with Jack is a bit complicated. It's inevitably subject to public scrutiny and judgment, but it barely caused a ripple online. My best friend on the phone said, don't worry, no one around here knows about it. Either Jack paid enough hush money or bought down the hot search. Your family's big and powerful. There's no way they can't protect you. A few days passed. Still calm waters. My anxious heart began to relax. That evening, Daisy went with the nanny to the beach to collect shells. The sunset poured through the glass window, spreading across the white sheets. After a session of intimacy, Jack pressed me against the glass window, gently kissing. Tired, bathed in the red glow of dusk, I murmured, millimeter hum. After showering, I picked up Jack's phone. He was in the shower. A text came through. I called him twice, but he didn't hear. So I opened it. Turned out it was from one of Jack's elders. Jack, I didn't expect you to be so stubborn. If you insist, then so be it. I scrolled up and found the chat history between Jack and this elder. The timestamps were from when we were still in the country. About you and Sarah, we don't agree. There's never been such a big scandal in the Jack family. Jack, I'm informing you, not asking for your approval. She's your brother's child. Jack, adopted, doesn't even share our surname. Bah, adopted or not, seducing her own uncle. Isn't she afraid of divine retribution? Reincarnate as a beast in the next life. Jack, I'm the one who seduced her. If there's any punishment, I'll take it. If anyone's a beast, it's me. We don't need to wait for the next life. Jack sent a draft public letter over that basically said, he, Jay, is worse than a beast. He covets his own niece, and he forcibly takes what he wants. Absolutely worse than a beast. Uncle, should I contact the media to release this right now? Jack's elder family member angrily responded with a series of exclamation marks. You're trying to ruin the family. You want to ruin her. I'll ruin the family. You, Jack said. I advise you to find the right person to blame before you start cursing. She's young. She can't take harsh words. If I find out you tried to hurt her again, we won't be talking through phones anymore. The shower door opened. I hurriedly hid my phone under the pillow. Aren't you tired? Jack habitually scooped me up, curled me into a ball, and held me in his arms. I replayed the earlier conversation in my mind. Why did you suddenly take me on a vacation abroad? No particular reason, just thought you'd like it. So here we are. This vacation trip was very rushed. We left almost the same day we got the news. It must be because of his uncle. Turns out, he'd already taken care of everything before I even knew. I didn't press further. Instead, I kissed him and slipped my hand into his soft bathrobe. Jack grabbed my hand, his voice hoarse. Sarah, still got energy. I kissed his lips proactively. Jack, I love you. Jack's whole body tensed, and he flipped me over, pulling me back into the vibrant red sunset. Sarah, I love you too. The swaying waves transformed the sunset's afterglow into blooming roses. Daylight was ending. The moonlight stretched on,